Ready.
You're going to call to order, regular meeting of Blair Flood Wastewater District at 5:49 p.m. Thank you all for your patience. We now have a quorum, and just to confirm that, I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Yes, President Source.
Present.
Secretary Matulak.
Present.
Trustee Matias.
Here.
Trustee Lettyju. Trustee Gordon.
Here.
And let it be known for the record that Vice President Bergenser, Trustee James, Trustee Palmeris are excused, and we have quorum, Madam President.
Yeah, that's gonna get some pleasure. We need to do all of these going. Great, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm gonna bring us to item here, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any requests for changes to the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to, or do we have a?
I thought we were gonna change the agenda.
Oh, we were going to change, well,
We're gonna remove item C and. Item C.
yeah, so item C, discuss and provide direction to staff regarding options for the composition of board of trustees. This came at request of trustee James, and so the recommendation was to postpone that item until she can be put, which I think is a good idea.
That's 5C.
That is nice, yes. So we'll remove that item and continue it. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda with that change?
Yes, I move that we approve the agenda with removing item 5C.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, hearing none. Agenda is approved, and that's gonna bring us to our consent calendar. Anyone wishing to address this board on items on the consent calendar can turn in comments, or I believe we have a hand raised online, correct? Do we have anyone in public? Anyone interested in public commenting on this item?
We do not have anybody right now.
All right. Are there any requests from the board to remove anything from the consent calendar? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Oppositions and seeing none? That passes unanimously. Excuse me. That's gonna bring us to item 5, which are our administrative items, of which we had 3, I believe, and now we have 2. And I'll ask the general manager to announce our first item, please.
Absolutely. So the first item, it's an informational report. This has to do with the Merritt Island infrastructure assessment that we've been partnering with the city on and Merritt Island Company. So we have Doug Moore here with Wes Joes, Tracy Rideout, and then online is Ann Gertz, I think. They're with Wes Joes, they're the ones that manage the study. We're going to focus on the sewer and stormwater parts. So I'll turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark, thank you for the introduction. I am happy to be here to present our Merritt Island infrastructure assessment work to the board. We'll use the abbreviation MIIA frequently throughout this presentation. And we will go on. We have 4 items on our agenda. And we will go ahead and launch into the first item, which is our project overview. The project was started in January of 2023. In July of 2025, we presented the first full draft of the report. And we are anticipating that we will have the final stamped report out sometime next week. The city was the project was funded through a grant from the United States Economic Development Agency. And the key parties involved were the city of Vallejo. They were the lead, your district, who focused on the sewer and storm drain systems. However, they were involved in all aspects and participated in all aspects of the study. And additionally, Merritt Island Company, which is the developer of the island, was actively involved. They were very helpful with their knowledge of the infrastructure and their relationships with the existing residents and tenants on that. And they also contributed financially to the overall project. The purpose of the study was to understand what is needed to support the future development on Mare Island. The original infrastructure was constructed by the Navy. It is about 100 years old or older, some of it. Much of it was missing records and reports that document what had been constructed underground. And it's almost not needless to say, but it's important that it is Mare Island and it's surrounded on 3 sides by water. So that's really that is critical to an understanding of what happens with the sanitary sewers and the storm drain systems. And that is also important when we talk about sea level rise and how that's going to affect the environment. So our goal, we got to our goal through 3 steps. The first of those steps was to understand the existing infrastructure that is there now, identify what needs to be fixed now with that existing infrastructure, and predict the future capacity demands. And so capacity in this case means the wastewater flows and the stormwater flows that need to be addressed, conveyed in the sewer system and the storm systems. And then ultimately, through those 3 steps, we are trying to identify the required infrastructure to support the future development and redevelopment of Mare Island. Or phrased a little bit differently, we want the future development to not be constrained by inadequate infrastructure as that development occurs. Are there any questions so far? Okay.
Yes. I mean, so you kind of mentioned, well, first off, when you talk about the grants, I'm assuming that's a federal grant.
Yes, it is.
And so are there any current impacts with the current administration or the current shutdown of it impacting any assessments where it goes?
Yeah, so the city is administering the grant. We have not, since the new administration took place, we have not seen any interruption in our invoices to the city or receiving payments from the city. So that's from the perspective that I know of, that has not been disturbed.
Okay, and so basically so what's left to do, how much, I guess, funding is still available?
Yeah.
Or is still supposedly left that is potentially at risk with
The grant was for $1.5 million. That included a contract with West Joe's and time for city and district staff involvement. The contract, our contract started out at 1.1 million, and then we added another chunk of work, which brought it up to about $1.6 million. And the work that remains is giving this presentation, finalizing the report, and giving a city council presentation. And we probably have about $25,000 left in the grant to wrap that up.
So we're primarily done.
We're primarily
Okay, excellent, thank you for that. And then, so you kind of highlighted in your last point about the future development, redevelopment. I'd be interested to see how you came with any numbers for that, or what that future capacity you were referring to.
Sure, let me talk a little bit about the process first. So we started out with a land use plan from the city and from Mare Island 2 years ago, and we progressed using that land use plan. And as our work progressed, Mare Island Company was also preparing a new specific plan, which changed some of the land use. So because we were so far along when that specific plan was released, we were unable to go back and change to that new land use. So we are working from the land use plan that was in effect when we got started on the work. And then from that, we use the engineering standards to estimate the wastewater flows, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. We use district standard methods and Solano County hydrology manual methods for estimating stormwater flows based upon different impervious coverages and the location within the county and the different sizes of the zone storm.
I guess my clarification question is, we're currently, at least we as a board of trustees have been hearing information that we've been having current capacity issues for current projects that are already in the works. For example, Connolly Quarter or Blue Rock Springs. So I'm trying to understand how we adjusted whatever the future capacity is supposed to be to not only incur that, but all other projects that have already just recently been brought up. For example, the casino. So those are the type of things to make sure that when we talk about future capacity, that we're truly allocating for any future capacity beyond even the projects that we haven't even thought about.
So we have, I will talk more about that in a future slide.
Sure.
And then I also have in the back of the presentation, some additional slides that we can pull up that identify the particular sewers that we've identified as under capacity. If that would help answer the question more.
Yeah, because I guess from my professional experience, when we talk about development, when you're looking at land use, I'm assuming you're maxing out to the development, for example, commercial and mixed use, all of that capacity to what the current plans are. So where those are the numbers that you're referring to, whether it gets to that, it doesn't matter. At least you're designing your capacity to meet the highest demands that are available.
Yes, we looked at three timeframes: current, a near-term future, which includes Connolly Corridor, the anticipated near-term growth for the dry docks and for Truro University. And then we also looked at a long-term future for build out of the entire island, and that timeframe is 2063.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
I saw trustee Matias and real quick, is it possible to get a copy of this? Is there a copy of the presentation online?
So it's still in draft.
It's all still in draft.
So I think you said it's gonna be finalized.
Yeah, I think we have all the comments from the city, and we're going through making what really are turning out to be minor edits. Our goal is to have the final report out next week.
So this isn't in the packet of the report we're discussing about.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna go over to,
No, I just had
On
one
the
quick
packet.
follow, yeah, for the packet itself. So when you say the report itself, is this a text report or does this include maps and drawings and things of that nature and spreadsheets?
It is a, if you were to frame a paper top down, it's a big thick report. It's got abundant maps, tables, figures. And we've also provided a GIS map that presents information on like a pipe segment by pipe segment database engineer.
Appreciate that, thank you.
you are trustee Matias.
Thank you, President. Quick clarifying question on the scope of your report. So is it fair to say that the report that I'm going to be reviewing both identifies improvements that are needed to service just what we have now? And then there's a separate section that addresses sort of improvements needed to address future projects and increase capacity on the island. Like, is that how the report is sequenced?
It is, yes.
And does it cover financing or?
It does not cover financing, nor does it cover cost estimates of the infrastructure.
Oh, thanks.
Question on the president, please, start going to trustee Lepley.
So can you just explain a little more what the city's involvement is? outside of, I guess, they have the grant, but the collaboration.
Yeah, the city was the lead agency on the project, as I mentioned, we had contracted with the city. But the study also included potable water systems, street and road systems, and a quick look at the dry utility, energy, power communications. And so those other elements really fell more under the jurisdiction of the city than they do under the jurisdiction of the board.
If I can clarify a little bit too, when it went out, the city went out for the grant, I'm a signature on, and then so is my home. We're the two signatures on the grant, so anything that comes through, we sign it, there's an MOU between the city and us that determine our responsibilities on administering.
All right, so, thank you for the questions. I periodically, as I go through this, I'll get to at the end of each sort of topic, I'll ask if you have any questions, but I'm also happy to take questions just as we go through the individual slides. But whatever approach is traditional for the.
Let's do a few slides and then otherwise, okay.
Yeah.
No,
Lot
we'll
of-
do
there's a lot of
a few
slides.
slides at a time, unless there's recording questions.
All right, thank you. So we looked at the sanitary sewer assessment. We did an age evaluation of the sewer infrastructure. We also performed field inspections to evaluate the infrastructure, and those field inspections covered a small fraction of the sewer pipelines and sewer maintenance holes, 10% and 16% each of those. But we did look at all of the DOMs, which is the name that is used for the sewer pump stations. And that comes from it used to be called the domestic wastewater system when the Navy was there in contrast to what was and then also an industrial sewer system. We performed smoke testing to identify defects in the system that will let stormwater into the sewers. We did capacity evaluations, including flow monitoring to quantitatively evaluate how much I&I is getting into the sewer system. And I'll talk more about I&I in a moment. And we developed a hydraulic computer model of the sewer system so that we could look at what is needed for current conditions, for that near-term future, and for the long-term buildup. So I want to take a little bit of an aside here and talk about the standard sewer sizing with infiltration and the inflow. The I&I is really important on Mare Island, so that's kind of what's driving this slide. There are two components of flow within a sewer system. That's the wastewater flow, which is also often called the sanitary flow, which always seems a little funny to me because that's really the unsanitary flow. And that the other component is the infiltration and inflow, the I&I. The sanitary flow or unsanitary flow is calculated based upon the land uses, the number of dwelling units. With your standards, that it works out to about 2.7 people on average per dwelling unit and 60 gallons per person per day, leads us to about 162 gallons per dwelling unit per day. For commercial areas, we typically use 20 gallons per employee per day. But if there are special land uses, then we want to capture those special land uses, like perhaps a brewery or medical offices that might have higher than normal flows. So that sanitary flow we want to get that in the sewer system, we want to keep it in the sewer system, that's the dirty water that needs to get to the wastewater treatment plant to be treated. The other component is the I&I, infiltration and inflow. And that comes from groundwater seeping into the sewer system and rainfall that flows directly into the sewer system or seeps through the ground and gets into the system through maintenance holes or through cracks in the pipes. And that I&I component is sort of clean water, and we want to keep that out of the sewer system so that it doesn't get to the treatment plant and it doesn't overwhelm the sewer system. Are there any questions about that sewer size estimating, and then the sewer gets sized big enough to convey all of the flow, the peak flow coming from both the sanitary flow and the ion. Okay. So now we'll go into some of the findings. The first sewer slide is related to the age evaluation. For Mare Island, about 71% of the sewers are in that old category of sewers that have very high I&I. And I missed, if you give me 1 second, I want to just go back. This is to one set of bullets here that I forgot to talk about. The I&I, again, rainfall and groundwater. We typically estimate the flows for new sewer systems at about 600 gallons per day per acre. But as the sewer systems age, they develop cracks and loose joints. And so right now for sewers in Vallejo that are over or prior to 1970, that I&I is estimated at about 4,000 gallons per acre per day. And now Mare Island, it has a combination of old sewers, like I mentioned, some of the infrastructure is 100 years old. And when we measured the I&I through flow monitoring, we found that Mare Island was producing 8,000 to 16,000 gallons per acre per day. So very high. That's also probably influenced by the fact that it's the island, it's got high groundwater because it's surrounded by water.
Can I just interject for 1 second?
Yes.
Just for context for the members of the board, I think we all live in wastewater every day, all the time.
Okay.
And I think it's might be helpful to understand that why this is such a problem. Because when you're just trying to carry sanitary flow and you end up with a whole bunch of water in there, it could lead to overflows, which we can't do, right? We don't want one molecule out of our sewers because then we're in violation of our permits. But then all that water goes to our treatment plant. And instead of just treating the dirty stuff, we're treating dirty stuff plus stormwater, and now our treatment plant is so overloaded that it's hard for us to be able to treat the way we normally do, right? With our throughput is so much higher. So I just want to make that point because this is all, if you were worried about overflows, you're like, oh, that's a lot of water, right? But if you're like, why do I care about this? I just wanted to make that point to the members of the board, because I think that this is a lot of flow, if I may, like, I think the technical term for this is like a lot. And also I just wanted to ask another question is, could you tell the board what the typical estimated life of a sewer is?
Yeah, sewers will last from 50 years to 80 years. It depends on conditions, but it's typically in that range.
So if we have 100-year-old sewers, we would expect those to have already been replaced, right, normally?
Yeah. And not all of the sewers are that old on that.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, if you guys have these questions, I didn't understand all of this when I
Yeah.
first started this, and so this I&I thing is a really, really big deal. It's one of the reasons why we help our customers replace their labs, in fact, so that they don't fix this I&I and overflow our system. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have a record of those 100-year-old pipes which have been replaced up to this point? And what percentage may be still left?
We do not have good records on the old system. There are pretty good records on the newer systems that are associated with the residential development.
one might not have, really good records on the old system, you know how old the island is. If you're looking at the piping, the laterals, I know a little bit about sewer laterals. If you're looking at those laterals and how everything is flowing at the rate, this higher rate, even though, yes, it's bound by water. That should give us a pretty good indication of how the condition and what needs to be changed, even though we do not have all this record. Is that not correct?
That is largely true, and that is supported by the inspections that we do.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So when Lennar built their system, they did pay and, did they, let me ask, did they pay to, fix and repair their system so that they can have a better overflow?
I'm sorry, I
No,
didn't.
no.
Excellent. Are you talking about just the housing track?
Yeah.
So the new housing tracks, I mean, that's all new systems, so those pipes are the.
Thank you.
But when those are, the parts that are in the community are new, but then they lead to a system that's full. Right, so where the houses were built, those are pretty new, but the remainder of the public system is still a very good system.
Thank you for that, sorry.
Actually, I was gonna save my question, but that brings up a follow-up. This, when you say 71% of the system, 29% of the system, or are we talking about the whole system of all of the infrastructure on the island, or are we talking about this portion of the system that's in use right now?
The portion that is in use now.
Okay,
And
how much out there, how much? Yeah, how much is out there that is not in use, but is still connected to this system and thus could infiltrate?
I
And is that part of this?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it.
I can't quantitatively answer that right now, but we did try to do some additional inspections in some of the sewers that were down by the water. And they were so full of water and debris that we couldn't get a camera through them to even do the inspection. So I think with more inspections, we would find that there may in fact be even more bad conditions than you go to.
Even though that's may not be the case, if you're talking about current. Let's talk about here from the line. You're talking about current, near-term growth and long-term future. You still should be able to project out what is needed to be done, because sewer laterals, no matter where you are, whether you have brand new infrastructure, older infrastructure, it's all outflowing, it's connecting. So we should be able to know, if we're doing all three of those pieces, we should be able to quantitatively understand what we have to do.
Yeah.
And we should know what the full population is, right?
And I agree with you, but I want to qualify it a little bit, that we did get cameras into all 23 miles of sewers. We looked at about 10 camera, about 10% of the sewers, so I can't give you a definitive answer, but generally, yes, you're right, we have a pretty good understanding. From the inspections that we did and knowing how old the pipes are and knowing what the rest of how old the rest of the system is, that those probably only get.
So we can project out to the total population. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make.
Why don't we go ahead, trustee Matias, and then we'll continue a little bit, and I'm sure we'll be back to this.
My question is to Tracy or to Mark. Between 1995, let's just say 2018. Do you guys have, and I know neither of you were here, but was the district doing any maintenance, or was it incorporating like just general maintenance and repair and replacement into their schedules as it relates to Mare Island, or were you guys just like not touching that because the government was still involved?
Yeah, so I'm just trying this one, but I'll try to be short. So originally, when the island was turned over, there was the Mare Island Utility District that was established, and it was between the city and the district. and it was to maintain the sewer infrastructure on their own. That was eventually disbanded, and then the district started the maintenance of the sewer system out there. And to this day, ever since, we've been maintaining the pump stations, the sewer pipes, everything. If there's a problem out there, we work with the developer to get it fixed. We used to work with Lennar. If there was major problems, we worked with that. But as far as the overall maintenance of the system, yes, we were maintaining the pump station, make sure everything's pumping, make sure everything was still flowing.
But as far as you know, that utility district that precedes your involvement in the island was not doing any replacement of sewer systems?
So over time, I mean, in 2008, there was a big project, another EPA grant, that the city applied for to do some major replacements. I think how many dollars, it's quite it's a big dollar amount on some of the main pipes. So in the report, it talks about like the pipes that have been lined, so they were CIPP lined. So, and then the pump stations, Dom for and some of the pump stations, there was money that went into those to basically do some replacement. So most of it was grant based, and then Lennar actually did some pipe replacement work as well.
And that's covered in the report.
Yeah, I think the parts that they have are the parts that you can recognize. Yeah.
There's. We have a figure that shows the section that was slipped, or sewer that was slipped line, so repaired to.
The reason why I'm asking this, President, is because I think just in terms of future conversations we have around Mare Island, it's important to understand what the city's commitment or investment has been since it was turned over to us. So I don't know how we get that, or whether that's a study or some report we'd have to commission from the city side, but that's helpful information that I think we should have.
Why don't we continue and then I'm not sure how far we are.
Sure.
Maybe we should continue
I can-
through, we'll
Okay.
take public comment and do questions, although if anyone has a big burning to clarify.
Thank you. So about 71% of the existing system is in that older category, about 29% of the existing system is in that kind of newer category. It should have low I because of its age. We see CTVs about 10% of the sewer system, and of that 10%, 35% of those inspected pipes have major structural defects. Including offset joints, breaks in the pipe, and cracks in the pipe. But again, about 90% of the sewer system was not inspected, and so the condition of that 90% is still unknown.
Are we talking about the 71%? And the older, or just?
We focused our work on the older sewers, but the percentages are of the entire system. Of that
So
entire.
what's the breakdown? So what I was, so I won't ask more questions, but when this is brought back and I'm gonna say this instead of people. But when you again present it to this body at city council, it's gonna be really important to have more clarity around how you're presenting. So that, again, if you tell me that 71% of our pipes are they're this years old, and the remainder is this many years, 25 years old, I would expect that we're talking in that way, so that we really understand what is the real picture and condition as we keep moving forward. Because at some point in time, to my colleague's point, it becomes a question of what have we been responsible for, what is needed as we go forward. And so it just, how do we break that down where you don't have to know the terminology, but if you understand the numbers and you understand what's old, what's new, it becomes a really clear way of presenting.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just a quick one. So when you say 35% of the pipeline have major structural defects, are you claiming that those need to be replaced?
They need to be repaired or replaced, depending on what is the best approach for those pipelines. Let's see, so we also did smoke testing. And that is where, so I was progressing through, so, again, 90% of the sewers were not inspected. We also did smoke testing, and smoke testing is where, smoke is blown into the sewer system with large fans, and it spreads out through the sewer system, and it comes back up. Through cracks in the pipe, it'll work its way up through the ground. It can identify if there's a cross connection with the storm drain system where the smoke comes up out of a drain inlet or roof drains that are connected to the sewer system. You'll see the smoke come up out of those roof drains. So we found 58 defects through that smoke testing, which present opportunities for rainfall to get into the sewer system. So those defects cause ionizing and can be significant ionizing into the sewer system.
All right, we're fixing something on the back end,
Oh,
but you're good to go.
okay. Continuing with the sewers, we inspected maintenance holes. We inspected 16% of the maintenance holes. And about 85% of those had one or more defects. Typically, those defects were corroded frame and cover, corroded ladder rungs, or they were made out of non-standard materials like bricks, as shown in this photograph. Another segment of the sewers are line, which is where a plastic has been inserted into and sealed onto the maintenance holes, trying to prevent I&I. But again, a large fraction of the maintenance holes are in the condition of them. We inspected all of the pump stations, the sewer pump stations with the DOMs. 7 of 9 of those are 60 years old or older, and those are past their anticipated 50-year expected life. They have required moderate repairs they do require moderate repairs in the near-term future just to maintain the level of service that is there now. And necessary repairs on DOM 3 and DOM 4 are in progress and have been completed recently.
And Don Comfort comes also from the island, boat. Yes.
So if there's 50 years life expected, and we're doing major repairs on the same 1, 3, and 4, or the remainder, I mean, if you're saying they're beyond 50, their life expectancy is 50, but we still have them, we're repairing them. So while that's the standard industry, what is the standard industry of repair beyond that 50 years and it lasting before you literally say it's time to move them and trade them or whatever it is?
Yeah. I'm gonna give you sort of a wishy-washy answer again, but it will depend on the individual pump station and how degraded it is. The concrete might last for 80 years or longer. The pumps, like the photographs here, are very corroded. They're gonna need repair sooner, so it's not just a hit 50 years and we better replace everything. That's inspect regularly and repair as you go.
And then, I'll give you an example, the New Bedford lift station on the mainland in Glencoe is not as old as any of these lift stations. And when it came up for major overhaul, we decided to demolish the station and install a completely new station. That is the preferred approach on many of these stations because they don't utilize current district standards in their construction. And they are harder and more expensive to maintain, and they take more effort to maintain.
So when we, again, in this report, when you're saying this, from being cost effective, this is why I'm asking this question, from a perspective of cost efficiency. At what point in, I don't know if there's any analysis where we really say. At this point, in the conditions that they are, they really need to change, or you might have another change. Is there anything that says that in the report?
We have some projections that they all will need to be replaced. Before build out of, by 2063. I would have to look for a table that tries to assign 10 years or 20 years left.
It's our assumption that every lift station that we're going to use in the build-out configuration will need to be replaced before downtime. So there's not a station on that, that's gonna make it through maintenance and rehabilitation over the build-out. I can pretty much say that with.
So
With
the
the-
report will say,
Yeah, it does say that.
okay. I'm just listening to your terminology and I'm like, okay, I'm looking for those things that tell me completely what's the next step. Thank you.
So continuing with the sewer capacity evaluation now, the I&I is in this system can account for up to 80 to 85% of the peak flows during storm events. So that's the I&I is a real problem on Mare Island. Many of the pipes and almost half of the pump stations lack adequate capacity for current conditions and future flows. And DOM 4 is currently limited to pumping 3.9 million gallons per day downstream because of sewer treatment plant capacity limitations and the downstream sewer system limitation. And that's really a critical piece because we have all that high I&I coming into the sewer system. And we have a pump station that has a limited pumping ability to push that water off of the island and down to the treatment plant. As I mentioned earlier, we did the smoke testing and identified 58 defects. And addressing those defects could produce near immediate reduction. So recommendations. Eliminate the 58 I&I defects from the smoke testing, repair the 1,460 feet of sewer pipelines with known defects. Complete CCTV inspections of the rest of the pipelines, which is about 13 additional miles. And provide those repairs as needed. Replace and repair maintenance holes with defective components, which from what we've inspected, that limited set are 27, or brick maintenance holes, 18 of those. And then complete the repairs on all of the DOM pump station. For future requirements, because it's the ability to pump more water downstream is limited. The future recommendations focus on reducing I&I on Mare Island. And so to get at the capacity that is needed or the reduction that is needed for the near-term development, we would need to remove about 50% of the peak I&I that occurs right now. And we would need to remove about 75% of that peak I&I to support the build-out growth of the and then we also are recommending that the district continue to do periodic flow monitoring of the flows in the sewer system so that you can quantitatively evaluate how all of this I&I reduction, how all of these repairs are reducing the I&I and what capacity is then freed up in the sewer system.
Thank you.
So that gets us through the sewer discussion. And we'll now transition on to the storm drains. The storm drain capacities had been evaluated in 2022 by a previous study, which concluded that nearly the entire drainage system had inadequate capacity. So we focused our work on less on looking at the existing system and more on looking at what is needed in the future for storm drain. We assessed the capacity including sea level rise on Mare Island, around Mare Island. We developed a hydraulic model to identify the required improvements to meet the design criteria for the future condition. We assessed 13 or 23 storm drain maintenance hole or drain inlets out of a total of about 870 structures. And when we inspected the lift station 15, which is the only stormwater lift station on Mare Island. This slide shows risk of flooding from the bay and from Mare Island Strait. The red and orange shading shows areas that are at risk now from a 100-year tide at elevation 10.0 feet, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency's predicted 100-year tide in Mare Island Strait. The yellow shading is for the year 27, and in that time frame, the tide is expected to come up, increase to elevation of about 13.5 feet. And then the green and purple shading shows the area that is at risk of flooding in the year 2100, when the 100-year tide has increased by about 7 feet. Or 17 feet, yes. So this increased sea level rise can be addressed a couple of ways, depending on what is in the area already. For example, in North Mare Island, at the right side of the image, because there's not much development there right now, it's all been torn down. It would be possible to just bring in fill dirt and fill that area to get up above the future sea level rise elevation. In the areas where there is existing development, that approach doesn't really work. And so what we came up with as an approach will be flood walls that block the bay water from coming onto the land, and new storm drain systems and pump stations that pump the runoff, the rainfall and runoff that falls on the land back out into Mare Island Strait. The findings for the storm drain system were that 70% of the inspected structures require replacement to meet current standards. Those issues are brick maintenance holes like the one shown in this photograph, corrugated metal maintenance holes that rust and deteriorate, bore throughs, which is where a pipe has gone through the storm drain maintenance hole or the storm drain pipe. There's an example of that in.
Sorry, that was our fault. We're again trying to troubleshoot something really quick. We fix it right now.
So
There you
the boreholes are a segment of pipe that is of a different utility that goes through the storm drain or through the storm drain maintenance hole, and you can see a small diameter pipe going through the edge of this main.
So the Navy didn't have their own standards. Obviously, this isn't a standard for most municipalities these days. So the Navy, as they did a lot of things, there's a lot of different pipe materials and a lot of this and stuff.
All We're getting close, but I will try to pick up my pace. We did look at the one stormwater pump station. It's in very poor condition. It does serve some of the businesses on Mare Island and it serves the Highway 37 interchange, but it won't be needed for Mare Island in the future. And the capacity needed in the future, again, is critically dependent upon sea level rise. And on the report, we've identified approaches for dealing with the entire island for sea level rise. Recommendations, we looked at the infrastructure improvements needed based on sea level rise at 3 different timeframes. We inspected key pipes and structures. We saw those photographs. We coordinated the repairs need to be coordinated both with the redevelopment on the island as it progresses and with sea level rise, and with the sea wall repairs, and we've got a couple slides coming up on that. We should inform Caltrans that the lift station 15 won't be needed in the future, so that they have time to start to address how they will keep the interchange free of water. And all of the agencies that are involved should participate in a development of a long-term strategy for sea level rise. The seawall was built over 100 years ago. It's been repaired a few times since then. It still supports marine operations. And it's approximately 1.9 miles long. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it. It's one of the prominent features on Mare Island, especially if you look at it from the land, from the mainland side. Here are some photographs of the wall. The seawall inspection was done by a firm called Moffett and Nickel, which specializes in these marine evaluations and repairs. The upper photograph shows cracked concrete that affects the structural integrity of the seawall. The bottom photograph shows exposed rebar and missing concrete. Again, that represents a structural risk to the seawall and the platform. There is additional inspections needed, including subsurface inspections of the seawall with divers and materials testing to get at what exists but is not visible from just from the ground surface and from the boat. So these repairs and upgrades will be required, and those two should be coordinated with the redevelopment as it progresses and with sea level rise as that advances. Where this will be covered in a future presentation to City Council. And so in conclusion, most of the sewer infrastructure is old and in poor condition. And it is not built to current standards. Immediate action is needed to reduce I&I in the sewer system. The existing storm drain system is inadequate, and addressing the seawall and sea level rise is really going to be critical for the future of Mare Island. The timing of all of these repairs and rehabilitation should be coordinated with the future development as it progresses.
Thank you, Doug. I think that you guys can see the comprehensive nature of the study, and we've only covered stormwater and sewer. You're gonna hear about water, dry utilities, roads in a later presentation. And on behalf of the district, I want to thank Doug and the West Gifts team for this comprehensive work. I also want to say thank you to the City of Vallejo and the Mare Island Company for their joint partnership, without which this project could not have been done. I did hear this evening that Doug has been a active consultant for the Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District through 4 general managers now. So he is a preeminent expert on sewer and stormwater facilities. And just quickly concluding comments, the infrastructure assessment, it was focused on evaluating the condition of the current infrastructure, as well as identifying improvements required to support new development. Now, putting aside discussions about ownership, putting aside discussions about financial responsibility, the report concludes that the Mare Island's current sewer and stormwater infrastructure cannot support new development. I think you all have come to the same conclusion looking at these slides. Now, just as the preparation of this report was a collaboration, creating a plan to resolve the infrastructure constraints is also a shared priority. The next logical step is to create a systematic infrastructure improvement plan, which coordinates with phases of new development. The Mare Island development impacts the whole Vallejo community, and it should be viewed from a forward-thinking approach, and projects must be built to withstand the test of time. That requires significant investment in the foundations. For this project, sewer and stormwater reliable utilities are critical aspects of that foundation. And from our side, Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District has historical knowledge, technical expertise, and we have maintenance support teams that are ready to support these improvements. And our goal is to effectively partner with Mare Island Company and the city to ensure these projects move through the entitlement process effectively. So I know we've been long in the tooth for this presentation. That'd be very comprehensive. Thank you. If you have any more questions, we can try to answer them.
Thank you. I'm gonna actually, thank you very much. Let's get public comment to make sure we get those, and then we'll go around. I see trustee board will just come around this side.
Yes, President.
One comment.
We had one comment from a public member. They named themselves future general manager. And they were just, the person doesn't want to speak. So they asked me to use share. And what they said was that the person echoes trustee Lady Ju's comments about the presentation lacking clarity. And the second comment that was made was that, hold on one second, let me find that second comment. Sorry, that was the second. The first one was, he wanted to know when this report will be available to the public.
Sounds like there's gonna be a discussion. That, do you anticipate by the end of the year? Would that be an accurate assessment or?
I am very hopeful that it'll be by the end.
That's
Right.
it?
Thank you. Why don't we go around? We'll start with trustee Gordon and we'll just go down the line.
First of all,
Questions.
I myself personally appreciate the detailed information, especially because this is not my normal world, right? And we get asked these questions a lot within the community, right? And so I appreciate that. One of the things, since you're going to be doing a presentation for the city of Vallejo, I'll ask questions and I'll present them to the general manager and he'll get them back to you. But one of the concerns I do have is the project of Highway 37. Like, how is that all going to take place? And will any of this be affected to that, with their goal of redoing all of that work? Does that make sense?
I can try to answer that. The improvements on 37 are not a subject of this report. So the report beyond the recommendation.
It was a direct question to you. I apologize. I didn't talk you. Yeah.
Beyond the recommendation that lift station 15 stormwater lift station be turned over to Caltrans.
Okay.
There aren't any recommendations related to Highway 37. My understanding is that that project is moving forward with a phase right now that they've made it a priority. And we'll be collaborating with Caltrans and with the project proponents on any impacts that project will have on that.
Thank you, because when I was listening to on the call, someone brought that up. And especially because like you mentioned, that side over here is not has no infrastructure on it at all. So they're worried that if any of that water will go into the project or anything will go into affecting the project. So they were just asking what you at the table. That's what they were asking.
My guess would be no, because you can't discharge water from a highway facility onto an adjacent property without mitigation.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. So I just wanna put it on the record, because I think it's important, and it's very difficult to have, a real robust dialogue about the report, because we're wearing two hats. And this is really to Claire is how this report, when it is completed, that we can figure out how we, between the city and this entity, have a special meeting, where it's, a special meeting. And we're having the discussion, because it really is not just a one entity, project. And it's very difficult to sit in one hat here and one hat there, when really this is a, convergent dialogue discussion, to your point. And I think it's really important that we find a way to have a real dialogue around this report and what are the next steps on both sides, and then we can deliberate it in the ways that we need to. But I don't think, in fairness to the work that needs to be done, in fairness to our constituents, that this can be done in a segregated manner, to be able to have a real discussion around what's next and how we're gonna do this. And I find it very difficult to sit in these different hats on this type of, for this subject matter that is so critical and very important. So I'll just leave it like that, because I think those are the thoughts around this one.
I mean, to basically to echo what trustee Levin's point is there's more questions than there are. I mean, we can go forever and ever, and especially from my professional background of construction and how this all gets put together. I wouldn't even know where to begin until that report and tool, because I see more concerns from what this presentation presented today to where because ultimately at the end of the road, there needs to be an understanding what the complete repair upgrades are with a cost associated with that. And until we get to that, we can make whatever projections we want, but it's until we get to that point of understanding what is the full scope of what we need to get to, tied to a number value, an amount value, then we're, and then to trustee Levin's point, this is a three-legged stool between the FWD, City of Vallejo, and Mare Island Company. And until the three entities are sitting in the room, going through this in detail, we're all gonna be running in circles. So as doesn't matter what hat we wear, we have to answer to constituents, we have to answer to the city as a whole, and to the county is a part of this conversation too. So so for us to even make any comments, we need to make sure everybody is in the room heading towards a common goal.
That's a great comment. I think overall, I mean, this is a first step. It's things that we've known about for a long time. And one of the ideas with the city and us as well is like, let's just understand the infrastructure that's out there, understand all the infrastructure that's out there. And there's been a lot of talk over time. It's like, well, this is bad, this will support, this may support. This is the first step. So you're right, it's gonna take a long time, but a lot of meetings to really figure it out and move forward. And it will take a, like Tracy was saying, a concerted approach of all the agencies to figure out how to best do this. And the component that's, you know, it's like, it's like, yes, we can look at our wastewater to see, it's like, what are all the pipes that need to be fixed? How do we fix those? But it goes hand in hand with development. Like, what's development doing? If you're gonna build a whole shipyard there, changes, where are the pipes gonna be? Where are the pump stations gonna be? So it goes hand in hand with development, replacement of pipes and all that. So yeah, I totally agree with you. We need to move together and address these issues.
And there's a lot of parallel conversations that can be happening. Though we count, for example, the SHIPS Act, that is part of this conversation of there's potential solutions in there. But we have to get to the nitty gritty, understand what do we actually have to get to? What is that final solution we need to get to? So until we get this study done to figure out exactly what needs to be completed, repaired, upgraded, because we can say what we want now, but we find out 5 years from now that it's not to the extent that we determine, we can do ourselves any favors at this point, because once again, we talk about time, we don't have all the time in the world. This is gonna go beyond us as in our council, so we need to make sure we're laying the groundwork for the future councils that are, and future boards that are behind us.
No, great point. And as a general manager of the agency, we want to support development. We want to be supportive of this effort. So as we move forward, yes, we want to have these meetings and help with this infrastructure challenge.
And we appreciate that, I mean, from this side of it, but again. It's a real, how do we look at this holistically and how do we begin to lay the groundwork? So we're not just talking about, this is the current state, I think we've been talking about that a long time. And now we know what it is, or at least it's on paper, we've known, right? But we have it on paper. But I want to be able to have everybody in the room and be able to start the first work. Otherwise, it's very difficult to sit in this space and then have to sit in another space without bringing it all together. So I appreciate the commitment to this work from the board's perspective. And now it's how do we get all three parts together?
I'm gonna continue us this way. I had similar comments. I think, I don't know if a joint meeting makes sense. The city needs to hear the road and the other side of things, but if that makes sense, we can, I would defer probably to the general manager consultant if it would make sense when the report is published and finalized, for us to have it when we discuss next steps. With the two boards, but I like that idea, and I agree with Trustee Natula. The thing that I was writing down is, thinking about reducing I&I by 50%. How detailed will this report get in terms of quantifying that? And in terms of setting, I know you've said that had that recommendation that we're gonna need to reduce, but how specific is this gonna get in terms of, you mentioned the smoke, the defects that were found in the smoke testing, and how quickly, maybe it's a combination question to the general manager yourself, how quickly can we get dollar values attached to those? Because I don't wanna wait for development of an infrastructure plan and processing the specific plan to start hustling for funds to start doing some of this work. So, like, how specific can we get in this, and then once this is finalized, how quickly can we get the dollar value so we can start going and trying to find resources?
Yeah, so WestJust can certainly help assign dollars, costs to all of the infrastructure. It wasn't included in the scope of work that we.
Okay.
So there's a clarification that's important to make on this, and I wanna make sure that I make it. And one, I agree with all of the comments so far. And as I stated, the next step is a coordinated infrastructure improvement plan, but that is not a district obligation. That is a development-driven obligation that is contingent upon development phase. We can't do this if we don't know what is intended to be built first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. Now, we're all about participating and partnering in that process, but that process has to be driven by the developer. And the next presentation that we intend to give tonight should shed some clarity on that process and what the district role is within that process. But I want to make that point, as I'm listening to these comments.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that seems to be thus far the barrier to figuring out what we need to do first, second, and third requires full input from all parties, particularly Mare Island Company, so that we're not replacing piping that's gonna get replaced in 5 years. And then, I made a note too that the lift station 15, I would be curious how Alco EPS are gonna get served in the future if that lift station's gonna get phased out, but at the very least, that's something that if we have an idea of what we think will need to be Caltrans responsibility, that is a good thing to advocate to get included in the $500 million SR 37 project. And we've already been starting the advocacy to include the Mare Island interchange in that project in a future phase, because we basically said, hey, you're trying to widen this road to reduce the bottleneck. You're trying to widen this road to reduce the bottleneck. If we're gonna have all this development on the island, it's gonna bottleneck again if you don't fix that, very, very flimsy interchange there. That's gonna take some time getting it included in the project, but if at least we can flag with Caltrans, look, irrespective of that, you're gonna have to deal with this lift station, and you're gonna have to deal with this lift station in in this particular year.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
that was my point, that was what I was trying to make, is what she just said right there. So, thank you.
I appreciate that, but the district
Right.
does not weigh in on traffic.
Yeah, that's
Right.
and that conversation is happening between Caltrans, MTC, Mare Island Company. And mainly, actually, at this point, it'll eventually include other parties, but knowing about the lift station helps me in those conversations, have that context.
Through the chair.
I think, go ahead.
So what I want to say, and I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm gonna take us to 100,000 feet. And part of solving problems and getting to the next step, everybody we know has a discrete piece in the puzzle. But the real question is, as this gets done, is also really being able to, everybody sitting in the room and talking about that. It makes a difference when you have a roadmap and you're planning on that roadmap and you understand, here's all the roles in this process, and we clearly define those roles. Part of our problem in government and the work that we do is our segregated roles and our failure, and I'm not talking about here, I'm talking in general, I'm talking about government, our failure to really be able to get in the room and do project management and assign you roles and be able to come back and forth in the ways needed so we can deliver for the constituents. Because it's not about us theoretically in these roles, even though we are part of the byproduct because we live in community. And so when we don't do that, I see failure often in being able to be productive, get it done well, and in a timely fashion for those that we're serving. And so that is why I'm making this point. I know it, I understand the discrete roles. I know my role here, I know my role at the city. But it makes it very difficult when we're talking about something so massive, so important, that has been a continued challenge and has many pieces. How do we get all the pieces in the room? Have the discussion and really are clear about what our goals are and how we're gonna be convergent and divergent at what points in different times, so that we can be successful here in Malaya. That's what I'm asking for at this 100-foot, 1,000-foot level, more importantly. And I do understand we each have a role, so I just do want to say that, because I hear you, I hear what you're saying. But still, we need to do this from my perspective, and this is the request that I'm making. And I'll make it when I'm sitting on the dais as well at city council, because I know the importance of this work.
I see trustee Mitchell again, and then I am
Just
gonna
a quick-
continue around, so these gentlemen have been very patient.
And as trustee, Letty points out, we each have our role. Let's be clear, this is the agency, this is your expertise. This is where you need to direct and provide the information for the other agencies to understand how they can help support that. But in my mind, this is the agency that takes the lead for this specific infrastructure, these specific issues, because you're the only agency that deals with I&I. You're the only agency that deals with this infrastructure. The other agencies don't, unless I'm missing something.
And I mean, kind of to that as well, is that, I mean, this study is a great example of working together. I mean, this was a combination of working with the city around in essence. So this provided this roadmap to this detail about what's actually existing. So yeah, to the point of working forward, I think that group can help work forward and move on this. And yes, we are experts on those things. But as Tracy said, this is all a development project. It's one big development project. We can advise them as part of the study to say, all this infrastructure is bad. You need to develop this system, and we'll make sure that it meets our standards and make sure it meets our ratepayers' requirements. Because those are our standards. And so we overlook the development, which we'll get into hopefully today, is that this is what we're trying to do. We need to make sure it meets our standards in that local form.
Yeah, and I guess my point is that you are the experts to the infrastructure portion of this, where you can help guide the city and Mare Island Company to understand what their roles can be to help from a financing standpoint, and how to help support what the infrastructure is. But it's this agency that ultimately determines or identifies what is the true aspect of what the true repairs and the upgrades need to have.
Absolutely.
All right, continuing around, any questions?
Yeah, just one question. Thank you for your presentation. So while we're waiting for the finalization of this report, can we still have concurrent discussions, between DFWD, City of Vallejo, and also Maryland Company to discuss that comprehensive infrastructure plan?
There is not one that exists currently, but yes, absolutely.
Sure, no, I understand that, but yeah, to initiate that discussion, so we don't have to wait for the finalization of that. Perfect, okay, and I'll reserve my other questions, we'll just talk offline, I'll email you guys, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Tracy. If I were to ask you what the repair and replacement plan was for some property on Tennessee Street on the mainland, what would your response be to that? Like, if I were to say, hey, when are you guys scheduled to replace, you know, the system on that corridor, on that business corridor? Do you currently have that information available?
No, not in that level. No. We have a sanitary sewer collection system master plan, which identifies capacity constraints, and it identifies age and priority of maintenance activities. Those are typically driven by I&I response. And we know through flow monitoring which parts of our collection system are significant contributors to the I&I issue. So we target those areas for replacement of pipe and lower laterals. And throughout the district, we promulgate our upper lateral improvement and replacement program to also battle the I&I problem. But to the level of detail you're saying, I don't know, like this 100-foot section of pipe is scheduled to be replaced in 5 years or something like that. That level of detail is not part of our current plan.
Is that an unusual like kind of body of work that a district like yours would have? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I mean, I'm echoing what's already been said times 6. You know, in the other world, you know, with the other hat that I have, I asked the department head, I said, hey, like, do you have a deferred maintenance
Sure.
budget?
Sure.
Where we're kind of taking care of all of our old facilities so that we're getting out in front of problems instead of having to deal with a big bill. And at the time, the response I got was, well, we haven't really had the money to do that, so there hasn't been a set aside for those older structures. So I'm trying to similarly get a sense of, is there a bucket in our budget right now, whether that's through the rates that we're charging, where you're setting aside dollars to maintain the system?
So let me provide a little bit more information, and hopefully this will help to clarify. Our field operations crews are out there every day, 365 days a year, doing closer to TV inspections and maintenance inspections. And so those activities will identify major structural defects that require immediate action. And for those activities that are brought to our attention, we act swiftly. And this year's designing a project to repair some of those things that have been recently discovered. So from that perspective, we do. But in contrast to, let's say, the Public Works Department's road maintenance program, like there's a comprehensive, typically in most agencies in Solano County, it's required by the Powell report, and they get money from ABAG to participate in this study that says, here's my 5-year consolidated maintenance plan.
Yep.
I'm gonna slurry seal these streets, I'm gonna do overlay on these streets, I'm gonna dig up these streets and replace them. Sewer collection systems don't typically, and correct me if I'm wrong in your experience, don't typically have that level of detail within them unless it's an extremely small collection system and an extremely well-funded. Ours is neither. So we do not have that level of specificity.
But presumably, if that funding was made available, that is something that you could perhaps contract out to have someone perhaps
Absolutely.
have co-create or co-develop. I guess just to get to the point, what I'm concerned by our current approach, which is not anything you guys are doing wrong. It's like development driven and we have a lot of old infrastructure.
Right.
So a lot of the work we're doing is very much reactive. And if we knew, and you have a field operations team, like this work is getting done, this is the schedule, we're setting aside money, we're getting out in front of issues. And that's a very different approach to dealing with the problems than like us getting, a 300-page report saying y'all gonna have to invest $30 million or whatever the number is, 100 million, whatever that sticker is gonna ultimately be. So to trustee Letterju's point, I know that you talked about perhaps having a systemic plan, system-wide plan on as it relates to Mare Island. But to the president's point, I would want to see both that and like what's the cost for the defects? What's the timeline to get that addressed and ensure that it's accounting for both possible new development that's in the pipeline, but some of our old stuff, because we have a responsibility, at least we should have a responsibility as a district to account for those repairs and some of that maintenance work as part of what we're charging, our ratepayers. That's just my, and I don't live that world, but that's.
Yeah, I wanna stick to the presentation topic, which is the Mare Island condition assessment tonight, but I hear your points and we have ideas to do exactly what you're saying. Unfortunately, it would require, I'll just throw a number out, a $50 million loan from Lithia to replace the collection system improvements that are required to bring that system up to a current standard of good repair within the next 5 years. Well, couple that with myriad other regulatory and infrastructure demands for our financial resources, including $100 million plant improvement to meet nutrient removal requirements. And tens of $millions that are going into trash capture, which is another unfunded mandate. So choices have to be made. And this district has to make those choices. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm one of the people that has to make those decisions. And we're trying to do the best we can with the resources available. And I assure you, we're considering all of those things that you're talking about.
I get that. And I was just talking to the general manager before the meeting about the fact that I don't really know how we got here. I was asking questions earlier in the conversation, right, around like, what level of investment has the city put into this? You guys talked about a utility district. I didn't even know that was a thing. But like, it's important to still have the conversation and be able to talk about all the things, because otherwise there could very well be a problem brewing on the mainland that we're not aware of. And then 3 or 4 boards down the line, they're having to deal with a report on their hand and having to figure out like, how do we pay for this? So that's really what I want to elevate. And it's really in relation to Mare Island. I'm not talking about, I use the Mare Island, the mainland as an example, but I'm really thinking about the people we have there right now, the Toros and some of these new businesses. So those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, well, I appreciate the report. I'm gonna go ahead and close the item. It's informational. We don't need to take any action, and we'll certainly be revisiting this for the foreseeable future. So thank you all again for kicking off the process and for the wisdom on this. That's gonna bring us to our next administrative item. I'll turn it back over to the general manager to announce this item.
So it's still available for, this is another little bit of a longer presentation. Okay, it'll be short. So basically.
Yeah, and for this one, why don't we, for this one, why don't we take the whole presentation, we'll take public comment, and then we'll try to do a equitable trustee question. This is another informational.
Awesome. So this came up as in the last board meeting to talk about kind of the development process and how we're different than a city, how we're part of the development process. So David Espinoza, our senior engineer, is going to provide a presentation on the district development process and how we fit in. David, take it away.
I'll actually introduce the item. Thank you, Mark, for starting that discussion and introduction. Tonight, we're gonna talk about Vallejo Flood and Wastewater's role in the development approval process, which David will lead most of. By way of introduction, all development directly impacts how the community grows and changes over time. And accordingly, that topic can evoke mental images, some positive and some negative, like those shown on this slide. But regardless of the imagery that a specific project evokes, development in Vallejo moves through what's called a coordinated entitlement review process. That's a process whereby all stakeholders provide project conditions simultaneously, and the city bundles them together and provides those conditions to the developer. When it's done well, this is a win-win process. The interests of the ratepayers and the community are protected, and the applicants also receive consolidated feedback, avoiding the need to navigate through a multi-layered, fragmented government review process. Now, the development division takes great pride in our role in this partnership, and we're pleased to share this presentation with you tonight. It aims to highlight and clarify the district's duties and obligations within the overall development process. So I'm going to introduce David Espinoza. He's a senior engineer with technical services. David also has over 20 years of experience in municipal utilities and land use development, and he oversees the development section.
Good evening, trustees. Thanks for having me. So I'll start off. The development entitlement process in California is a complex journey that determines whether and how land can be used for a specific project. The city primarily manages that process. The district plays a critical supporting role. Tonight, I want to walk you through how that process works and, more importantly, where and how the district fits into it. The district's involvement is essential to shaping the future of our neighborhoods. Let's take a closer look at how we contribute to this process and why the district's voice matters. Yeah. It goes from an idea to approval, the development journey, right? So here, customers, applicants, developers bring forward a concept or proposal to the city. The city reviews the proposal and shares it with the relevant stakeholders, departments, agencies, and community partners, such as ourselves. Stakeholders provide input, outline requirements, and identify any concerns or conditions that must be addressed. Once stakeholders' requirements are satisfied and the proposal aligns with the city goals and regulations, the idea receives approval. This slide illustrates the steps in the entitlement process from pre-application to construction. It's important to note that along the process, district staff is not the applicant's engineer, and the district is not an approval body for land use entitlements. The role belongs to that role belongs to the city. Why is it important for the district to review these projects? To protect the infrastructure and avoid unnecessary operations and maintenance costs, to safeguard public investment and ensure long-term system reliability, to serve our customers with transparency and fiscal responsibility. Let's go through the various size of projects and what we're looking for, right? So on a small projects such as a single-family home, an ADU, a tenant improvement, we're looking for, on the plans, we're looking for laterals, we're looking for cleanouts, two-way cleanouts, one-way cleanouts for the district. Once that's reflected on the plans per our standards, then we calculate the fees and ask the applicant to pay the fees, and project is approved. The medium projects have slightly higher potential to impact our facilities and require a few additional submittals to achieve approval. Large projects. The list gets longer. Large projects have more submittal requirements because their potential impact on the district's facility is greater. We look at compliance with the district's master plans, policies, procedures, and standards. As a result, large projects take a longer time to receive approval from both the city and the district. Here you see an estimated timeline for the various sizes of projects to work their way through the entitlement process and receive construction permits. From small projects which can take a month to large projects that may take several years to receive approvals. Here's a slide that shows the entire development process from idea to construction permits. I'd like to draw your attention to the legend on the bottom left of the slide. The gray box reflects tasks or responsibilities performed by the applicants. The white box are tasks by the city, and the red outline boxes are tasks performed by the city and stakeholders, one of which were as noted before, the district does not control the project timelines. We respond to project submittals. Our review is reactive, not directive. This process reflects a concurrent review with both teams evaluating applications simultaneously. This approach benefits the public by streamlining the approval process. Now let's walk through each phase in more detail. Phase 1. The purpose of this optional phase is for the applicant to be more prepared for the subsequent phase. Examples of the projects that have recently completed phase 1 are the Mare Island Pole Sheds, happen to be in the Conwood corridor, the Blue Rock Springs Golf Course housing development, and the Scotts Valley Casino. All of these projects have completed phase 1 and have received the district's preliminary comments. All of these projects are currently in the applicant's court. The district is waiting for the applicant to submit their plans to phase 2, the formal submittal process, which I'll talk about next. Phase 2. In this phase, the district will collaborate with the city to assist the applicant in making their dream a reality. District staff must be responsible to ratepayers by making sure that any project impacts on our system are mitigated. Step B, the CEQA environmental phase enables this process. After the studies are performed and the CEQA document is finalized, we make sure any impacts are mitigated by the project proponent, project applicant, and not borne by the ratepayer. Next, in step C, we combine all the requirements from steps A and B to form the district's formal conditions of approval. Finally, step D, the project receives approval from the decision-making bodies, whether it be staff, planning commission, or city council. With approvals in place, the project enters the next phase. Phase 3, construction permits. Developers may wait months or even years after phase 2 before initiating construction permits. The district remains responsive, not directive. We act once improvement plans are submitted. What's our role at this point? Once improvement plans are submitted for our review, we're looking at the CEQA document and any required mitigations. We're also looking at the list of conditions of approval that we have developed in the phase 2. Once all these conditions are satisfied to the district standards and to the district satisfaction, and the required fees are paid, we proceed with issuing construction permits. An example we just talked about is a project that is phase 3 construction is the project known as Costco, which in reality is a Lewis Group development named Fairview at Northview that initiated 8 years ago in 2017. We've been working with 3 separate owners, the Lewis Group, Costco, Raising Cane's. For many years, this project has been delayed throughout the entitlement process. At this point, all the commercial development on the west side or the left side of the screen of the project is moving forward and is close to receiving all its permits. The residential component of this project on the east side or right side of the screen is on hold pending resubmittal by the developer. As you'll see, there are 13 permits related to this project, and so far of the 13, 10 have been reviewed, approved, and issued, and 3 pending construction permits that are under review and nearing approval. So we're close to finalizing and issuing all the permits necessary for the west side of this development. This project is a perfect example of how a large project's approval process can be complex and take a long time to receive approval for construction. This slide shows different types of permits that exist in the various phases I've discussed. The district was involved in all of these types of permits in fiscal year 24 and 25. Staff completed over 700 reviews on nearly 400 permits. Of these permits, 98% were reviewed and commented within the time frame provided by the city. There are a large number of permits, but only a few of these permits are of the nature of Fairview and Northgate, also known as possible property. Tonight, we've covered the district's responsibilities through the key phases of review and permitting for new development. Through this process, the district remains committed to supporting responsible development while safeguarding the integrity of the district's infrastructure. Thank you.
We cut this presentation down a lot to form a high-level overview of our participation in the overall development review process. And I hope it clarifies our role in what can be a very complicated process, depending on the nature of the project. Also, during recent board meetings, district staff has received comments regarding specific project delays from trustees. Questions about sewer capacity have been raised. And additionally, it was suggested that board communication regarding major projects could be improved. You also asked Kent, how can you help? How can you help us? You can help us by bringing your questions about specific projects to Mr. Tomko, who will in turn talk to David and myself, and we'll go and work out a problem or challenge with the applicant directly and resolve those situations. We've done that effectively recently with the project that President Source brought to us. Additionally, after consideration, myself and David went over these ideas and these questions that you brought, and Development Services also plans to take the following steps to immediately improve communication and engagement. Step one, we want to enhance website communication, making useful information easier to find and more understandable. That includes our standards, our master plans, our fee structures, and the development approval process flowcharts. Secondly, we want to provide more opportunity for early engagement between project applicants, particularly in that phase one optional stage. We feel like having district staff available to clearly explain our requirements will minimize confusion and project complexity. This will also include engaging with our city partners to make sure that the district's requirements are included in their overall process materials and their informational charts about the entitlement process. And lastly, we will include a development update in the district's quarterly report, which will provide stakeholders with a reasonable overview of major project milestones. And it will also list the consideration the district is under evaluation with during the approval process. I think Trustee Matias specifically asked for that. We see these steps as immediate and effective ways to strengthen both our partnership in the collaborative development process and to better fulfill our primary objective, which is providing affordable and reliable sewer and stormwater facilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment?
We don't have any public comment, press.
We don't. Thank you very much. Comments from the board? If anybody wants to go, you can go around.
I could make one. I really want to thank the board for all your comments. I mean, recording everybody for your comments to bring this up so we can try to highlight this and get an understanding of our development process. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for being responsive to the, not only did you get this back at the very next meeting, but I for one appreciated the follow-up on the questions and the commitments to improvement, which weren't, the board had asked for information and you all, have now even offered more than that, which we really appreciate. So I'll go over to Trustee Gordon and we'll, if folks have comments, please go this way.
It goes to show that this board is truly lined up with listening to the community, because I didn't know you asked, and then we had like a 3-hour conversation, and I asked the same thing. And I think this is the moment that our community knows that they voted the right people in. Because we are listening to them. And we're hearing them, but what's even more amazing that you listened to them. And you came up like the president stated, instantly, you didn't prolong this, and I really appreciate it, and I definitely need to make sure I get a lot of copies of this. So that, because I do a lot of, meet and greets, and some of these questions come up, and I don't wanna sit there like, and pretend like I have the answer, because I do know a lot, but this is your world, you can sleep this. And I wanna make sure that I represent, so there's no surprises for them when they get in a project, or they're not discouraged either. You know, all this can be tangible. We can fulfill this project. We just need to know the proper steps. So there's no surprises later. So thank you for listening to us.
Other comments from the board? Go ahead.
Um,
Sorry, I promised to go this way.
yes, sorry, so. Something you mentioned at the, first of all, thank you so much, this is great, and I appreciate all the process improvement recommendations. That's awesome. But there was a comment at the end that got me thinking, and it's just an open question I have for you guys to think about. So it's one thing for a developer to perhaps bring an issue to our attention and then have us phone up Mark. But then I think about the people who perhaps don't have the resources or the staff, and they're trying to get something through, and they don't have the ability to give me a call or give anyone on here a call. I don't necessarily feel like that feels equitable, and so I wonder if in collaboration with staff, with the city staff, you guys can set up some metrics, like depending on the type of project that we have, and maybe you already have this, we are collectively committing ourselves to reviewing this in X number of days or X number of weeks or X number of years. So that everyone just knows that they've got a fair chance to have their documents reviewed in a consistent amount of time without having to pick up the phone or without feeling like they've got some pull calling one of us. Because to me, it's not a matter of like, I'm not trying to prioritize one project over the other. I do want to understand what the pain points are. And I think that's what everyone here, that's the same orientation everyone here has, but I don't want it to come across like it's like I can phone up X person and then my stuff's gonna move through faster, because that's not really the intent behind it. It's more like, how do we get to a yes? So just something for you guys to think about.
Yeah, thank you, and I think that David illustrated in the slide with the pie chart that we performed over 700 project submittal reviews last fiscal year. Of those submittal reviews, 98% will return in the comment period demanded by the city's process, which is typically a 10-day turnaround time.
Yeah, 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the size of the project.
And the vast majority of those projects fall into the small project category, which is like an ADU, single family home tenant improvement. And many projects we turn around with no comments at all, right?
Right,
Pay fees.
yeah, some projects are ready to be approved upon submittal because the plans are so good, or that engineer architect has worked with us before, so they know we're looking for lateral and 2 cleanups. The 2-way and the 1-way, and that's it. It's pretty basic on the small projects. But certainly on the larger projects, yeah, they're more complex. The timeframe is dictated by city staff. They route it through what are called Central Square or E-Track it. All permits are routed through the city's software system, and they assign the permits to us, and they give us a window. The small projects give us 2 weeks, on large projects they give us 4 weeks. We aim to comply with that timeframe, both on the small ADU all the way to the large development. We aim to comply within those timeframes, and we are successful at completing these reviews on time. But certainly that timeframe is dictated by the city, it's provided by the city. But one thing is on the larger projects, it's really initiated and pushed by the developer, like how the developer and their engineers or architects, like how quick can they turn around the comments? Can they address everything on one submittal? Most of the time the answer is no. But yeah, we're reactive. When they submit it to the city will route it to us. And we'll jump on it and review it within the timeframe provided.
Just add one thing to that, and thank you, David, that's a great description of the process. We're also kind of batting around the idea of like tenant improvement Tuesday or something like that, right? Within this opportunity for collaboration, we want to provide the ability for people to come in with staff if they have questions. And one of the things, and we're always available, but to your point, you know, maybe we make it more available, transparent. On Tuesday from 9 to 11, we're open for you guys to come in and we're allocating staff to answer your question. Something like that.
Yeah, and that's my final comment. There's actually other cities who have that same program in place. I'm sure you're familiar with it, where you've got like someone from PD, someone from the district, someone from the city staff. And when I was serving on the commission, I proposed it and there was some pushback because of capacity on the city side, but I think that would be wonderful if we could collaborate to have that system set up where we would make ourselves available, even if it's for a short window of time for folks to drop in. That would ease things. So thank you, President.
I'll make a quick follow-up comment on that, because I think I love that idea, and I think the exchange that we had was a business owner that was confused about trying to get a permit on something and wasn't clear on what was the city versus what was VFWD, and it had to do with the grease trap.
Sure.
You know, and so I had a conversation with Mark, confirmed it was VFWD, but what those interactions with us help with, I think what it should be is not, oh, somebody's gonna jump the line or anything like that, but it's a feedback loop. It's, okay, where's that education point where someone goes to open a business in Vallejo and we can give them a comprehensive guide to who to go to for what, and make sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, so that they understand that, you know, they're really frustrated because they're going to the city for their grease trap and they don't understand why, you know, and so that suggestion very much solves or provides an avenue to get that going. So I think the more feedback we can get, and we can get improved policies based on is great. So with that, unless no, Trustee Majoli got a comment.
I'll let you go since she's talking in
We'll just go back.
So and I want to qualify my questions and comments towards the fact that I am the liaison to the planning department. So I want to bring some feedback to our processes to make sure that we can make this as efficient. And I want to also highlight this is the way we're having these conversations right here is a ray of hope to where this is the most collaborative that I've seen this agency with our city and our planning department to understand if there are hiccups somewhere, at least we're having those conversations to try to resolve them. But especially to the point of the bigger projects being the more complicated. And to Trustee Matias's point is, I want to make sure we're looking out for the small mom and pop, the one that's actually the homeowner that's actually trying to submit a project that has no understanding of what the process and the project is, to where at least they have a fair shot to be able to have their project done in a timely and an equitable fashion. But to the point of the larger projects, and this is where from a larger standpoint to where besides public safety being one of our top priorities, economic development is a close to 1A. And so Councilmember Trustee Matias and I have been having conversations of how we, my department as a planning commission and his commission as economic development, can start collaborating on some conversations that we'd have more forward looking, and to speak to the larger projects that have kind of come to light with some challenges. And these are all related to during the initial submittal, I guess, that came to you guys, where you have capacity, but then at a later time, they get information saying, no, you don't have capacity. So this goes to my question of, from the submittals that you look at to identify, do you have capacity, do you not have capacity? I'm assuming along the way where there was capacity, but ultimately you were determining where there wasn't capacity. Was there something in the submittal process that either the developer, the city, or anyone may have missed, whether there was a revision that happened that didn't allow you guys enough time to determine if that capacity needed to increase, decrease, whatever it may be? So I want to help understand from that process standpoint, if there was something missed in that submittal, for example, for the Costco project, there was a point that the capacity then wasn't capacity from Conley Quarter, same thing, capacity, no capacity. Blue Rock Springs, same thing, capacity, no capacity. So I want to understand from that process where it got to capacity to no capacity, what changed from either the developer, from the city, or information that you had or didn't have that changed that determination, because that's a big deal. If there's capacity that determined no capacity, something was missing in the process.
Yeah, to determine capacity, yeah, on larger projects, we require that a study be performed, that the developer contract with us to hire our modeling consultant to determine the impacts from their project downstream in our collection system. And so typically, like I said, larger projects, that's a requirement, and the developers will comply, they understand what we're asking for. The applicants, design engineers, they're gonna design their project. If it's this table, this subdivision, right? So they're not gonna design, they don't know our infrastructure, how does that affect downstream? And so hiring our consultant to model their flow downstream is critical. And that's something that we've been doing and we continue to do to let the applicant know whether there is capacity or not. One key thing to remember, and that's both from the casino's perspective and the Blue Rock Springs perspective, is that our master plan is based on the city's zoning and general plan. And so are our rates, and I can be corrected if needed. And so our rates are based, and our master plan, our sewer collection system master plan, storm business plan, wastewater treatment plant master plan, it's based on zoning and anticipated development within the city of Vallejo, right? And with that in mind, land that is currently owned by the casino, it was not zoned for a casino. Land that the Lewis Group in Blue Rock Springs, we'll just say Blue Rock Springs Golf Course, that land was not zoned for residential or for development other than recreational, right? So we can't say that there's capacity for those projects, because that capacity, if there is any capacity, is owned by the rest of the landowners that are currently zoned for development, right? So that's something that we have to keep in mind. Who owns that capacity, right? The capacity is owned by the current landowner, zoned for residential or commercial or whatever. So that's another aspect. I have seen disconnects, right? And like I said, I think part of the issue that we've seen is how long it takes for these projects to come to fruition, right? It's how long has it taken? We're close to, or Lennar Homes, I believe, is close to developing the homes on Mare Island. That's after 15, 20 years of that project going through entitlement process as well. Going back to Lennar Homes, Lennar Mare Island owned the island, right? So these projects take such a long time, and the question is 10, 15 years later, is that capacity still there? Have we updated our master plan? And all those things, they contribute towards the capacity availability.
If I may, a couple of things to clarify, what David's saying. Capacity is not owned by anyone, it's issued on a first come, first served basis, essentially. Like, you come in for development, we evaluate the capacity for those improvements to be served, and they can require certain downstream improvements, or they can just come in and build, and they pay a fee. Our issues with capacity are not like dry weather capacity. They're I capacity during wet weather, to your point about maintenance of the sewer system and all that. And we've chosen, the methodology that we have chosen is through I reduction to regain lost capacity. So developers in the Sears Point, for instance, sewer shed, they pay a fee. that those fees get tallied up, they get added to a pot of money that's performed each year in a capacity regaining project through getting rid of bad pipe that's letting a lot of water in, it's not sewer water, replacing with nice tight pipes that don't let in non-sewer water. So, this is a multifaceted question, and I think that it bears potentially a future discussion and presentation on what capacity is, so we can have that conversation and in a more structured format.
So I guess, so what stuck out to me is that you're saying you're designing capacity based on zoning. So my question behind that is, don't the developer projects give you, beyond the zoning, they give you what their projected is, whether it's number of homes or whatever, so a lot of that is before, because a lot of these projects are gonna be rezoned in their anticipation, so I have a little concern that if you're designing directly to the zoning, you're missing the point. If they're giving you, if they're giving you drawings of what they're projecting for that project, that's what I'm anticipating you're designing capacity to. So, for example, if Blue Rock was designed for 150 homes, but then they add 300 homes later, that's a different issue. That's why I was asking the question of, is it their submittal of what they're initially proposing to you, or is it a revision they're making that it went from capacity to non-capacity?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm trying to understand from a planning standpoint, if the planning department needs to hold the developer responsible for whatever they're presenting to you, then that's what I need to understand.
It's not that, it's, well, to use your example. The Blue Rock Springs project is not in the city's general. And we would have no way to have modeled its required capacity based on that general plan. Furthermore, we can't go through an iterative process of what may or may not be built on every project parcel in the city. We would never hit our mark. It would just suck up resources and all that. So it's not as though, I don't think it's a question of changing the requirements. It's more like, was the capacity improvement considered in the Nexus study and included in the capital improvement program or not? And if it was not, then that obligation is owned by the developer and not by the ratepayers. This is a complex discussion.
I think this starts that conversation of how do we better get past the I guess the tripping points of identifying what's capacity, what's not capacity, to where, like you point out, if it's not part of the general plan, then how are you even able to design capacity in the first place? So, but if they're giving you a set of drawings that identify what they're projecting of what their mass capacity is, I think that would give you a baseline to figure out what that capacity should generally be. So this is where I'm trying to understand where the disconnect is of what you're required to or what they're giving you. If they're not giving you all the information, that's a conversation I'm gonna have with my planning department, my developer, to say, hey, how are they supposed to design capacity if you're giving them only this information? But if they're giving their full build out of what they're trying to do, that's what I need to understand from a developer standpoint. What else do you need that you're not getting?
I don't know what project you're.
Well,
I don't recall.
If I can just jump in for a second, so I think.
But I'm talking about in general, if they're giving you, yeah, in general, if they're giving you a drawing of, for example, the casino's having X, Y, or Z, this capacity for how many rooms are on there. How do you?
Yeah, so I think the question you're asking, and the problem that like has been coming up, I mean, specifically the Blue Rock Springs Casino and Connolly Corridor, it's like. They're, as far as what we did, they're in the preliminary design process and they come to me and they say, hey, we're planning on doing this project and we have 400 homes, we have this. And we're like, we have this study, we're a little concerned about capacity, there may be a capacity problem.
Right.
And then they come to you and they say, wait, the district said there's no capacity. Well, they haven't given us anything yet.
And that's what I wanna get to, is if they're not giving you enough information,
Well,
I need.
they're not in the process yet. They have to submit the formal application. They submit the formal application drawings that says, this is what we're planning on building. Instead of the iterative process, we're planning on building 500 homes and here's our flow. And then we go, okay, well, you need to do a sewer study. You need to do this study. And we go, okay, well, there's not capacity for that. So a lot of it's happening like beforehand. They're in the preliminary part. They're just kind of feeling it out. And you're getting it, it's like, whoa, the district's saying there's no capacity. Well, there's nothing officially that's been submitted yet. Until they get to the formal application, it's all irrelevant. We're saying, hey, can you just tell us some information? What do you have? Hey, you may have some problems with this. This may be a problem. We know we have studies that there may be a lack of capacity, but until they submit the formal application, we say, okay, well, you need to do a sewer study, you need to do this. And that's when they'll say, okay, we're building this many homes, it's gonna have this much flow. We go, okay, well, let's look at the system. Does it have capacity? How can we mitigate this? And this is how you're gonna have to mitigate it. So
I think that helps me have that conversation with the planning department and with developers to help them understand how to help you.
Right.
That's what I'm that's what I'm ultimately trying to get at, to where there's that misinformation of capacity, no capacity. You need to
Right.
have a baseline understanding of what you're being asked to design to. And if you're not, and if they're not giving that to you, then I want to make sure you're getting that information so they can get the accurate information, as opposed to, yeah, we have capacity, then a year later saying, no, we don't. Well, then that means you didn't give them the right information.
yeah, we have a big system. We know certain capacity constraints. And so, yeah, there's general information, but until they get to that formal process, you know.
Understood, okay. Thank you for that question.
Just to clarify, on the Blue Rock Springs project, yeah, they submitted a preliminary application, from what I recall, it was simply to relocate the clubhouse from the west side to the east side. And that was about it. We have had talks with the developer, he threw out anywhere from 300, 600, 900 homes, nothing on paper. He threw out 20,
That's why I'm asking, if they're saying 300, 600, 900, then you say, I can't design capacity.
they threw out 20,000 square feet of commercial, right?
I mean,
Like where, how, you know, who, like, yeah, so we don't know, right? So they provided that and we provided our comments. So through all the three projects, right? So they've gone through phase one optional. And they have not gone to step A of phase two, the formal application process. We haven't received that application from the city, right? So all these three projects have chosen to only go through phase one, which is a preliminary process, and we perform our duties of providing our preliminary comments. We're waiting for them to submit formally, right? Go through phase two, submit, put your design, your project on paper, and we'll be happy to provide you our comments.
You have a preliminary design or pre-design kind of meeting we can have with developers to actually get a baseline of what they're trying to get at. Because I know when I've worked on projects in the past, is that if you want to get an understanding of limitations, then you have that before a formal application is done. Can you do pre-design or preliminary before a formal?
Right, and that's a purpose, right? And I mentioned here, it's the purpose for this is to help the developer get ready to submit in the formal process. And so we do it, and through this process and the formal process, the city has a technical project review committee. And so we meet every Thursday morning. If there's a project scheduled, and we'll talk through the comments and we'll talk to the developer and explain our constraints. And so, yeah, this partnering with the city, since I've been with the district, has only gone better every day, every year, the relationship with staff. And so I'm happy with this collaborative environment that we're currently working on. We need to continue to work on it to make it better. But certainly, yeah, we can't perform our duties without the city. We need to be integrated. And one great way of that integration is the Central Square building permit processing or permitting process.
Thank you.
Trustee Leathers, the still goes down.
Can you go to phase one?
Which,
Okay, that's
this one.
it doesn't. So I just want to go back. I'm getting mixed messages from what you're saying, and thank you for the presentation. Is there a modeling tool? If I come to you with my plans and I'm just trying to figure out capacity, those issues, is there a modeling tool that I can sit down with you and have clear understanding that I can do 300, 600, however many, and that each of these phases that we're talking about in that modeling plan tells me potentially preliminary. It's not in concrete before I get to phase two and I've spent all this money. Sending you my designs and so forth and on. What tool is there to sit down with you to do that exploratory process? I'm not hearing that. You're saying it, but then you pull back and you say something else. So is there that process? I just wanna know clearly.
Yeah.
There is. However, that process that you refer to costs a lot of money.
Okay, but it exists.
It does exist, and we offer that to mainly projects that potentially have a capacity constraint challenge. And not every project is required to do that modeling.
Mhm.
Larger projects like the one we're talking about,
Mhm.
they have to do the modeling to evaluate. And if they wanna do multiple iterations, they can, but they pay for that modeling because it shouldn't be borne by all the other ratepayers, it's for that project.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I just wanna know,
That-
is it
yes,
available,
yes.
readily available to be able to do however many iterations that someone would
Absolutely.
like to do? That's the most important part of it, regardless of cost or whatever. A big developer can determine if they wanna pay that cost. I just need to know that the service exists. So in addition to that, when you speak about the tracker between yourself and the city, where things are are sent forward for you to do your part. Does a developer or homeowner who is working in this process have the ability to track where their project is?
I believe it's a city permitting software, so, but I believe the answer is yes, I don't know that for sure. But I believe the answer is yes, I believe the applicant can log into Central Square. And see where their permit, what stage of the,
Central School and being,
There is they do have a tracking system.
but can I, if I have my plans with the city and I'm going through the process, can I log into that system and see where I am?
You should be able to if the drawings are developed enough, I believe. That's my understanding of if the project is to a level of completeness to where they can provide that process in there, then it should be available. Because that's
Matter, if I'm at phase one, I'm at phase two, I'm at phase three, and you're using a system, I should know where I am, whether my drawings are.
Yeah, that's assuming your drawings are to a level.
But
yeah.
even not, if I'm, my application, at the moment that, I'm just trying to understand, because this is a combined effort.
Yeah.
At the moment I submit to begin this process, there's a tracking system that everybody says they're using. I wanna know, as an user, can I see myself going through the system? So I know where I am, where it stopped, what is needed of me. Does anybody know?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, yes.
And so on your website, because you have your site, right, you've just shown me. Is this on your website to show what your responsibility is? If I wanted to go through the process and see what you're responsible for, can I see this? That shows me what your part is.
we just developed these slides very recently for this presentation, so they're not on the website. They could be, I suppose, but they're currently not on the website.
And I'm just speaking to just some really simple things, since I'm wearing this hat, I'm not wearing that hat, so. Just from a very simplistic perspective, and being an end user in a very complicated system, government. How do I know where I need to go if I, like you just talked about, your grease pit? And if I had something on this system and I'm sophisticated enough, just very simply, I could have gone and clicked and said, okay. Where, even on the, where should I be? Where should I be coming to? And so, when we think about what's simple to us, how do we make sure that our end users are able to understand where they're supposed to be? How they can utilize the services? And that's what I always look for when we talk about self-service, when we talk about maximizing staff time, because there's some real simple things that can help us maximize our time, because we're maximizing the time of the end user. So just, food for thought to think about that as we continue this process and continue to collaborate with the city.
Yeah, certainly, those are great recommendations. Yeah, we live, so we live and operate within the city's permitting software, so those are. Which works really well. Staff has adapted to that software, not just for permitting and approving permits, but in performing inspections, scheduling inspections. So if we live inside of that world, we have no control over how it operates. We simply live inside of it, and so we share with once we have communication with the applicant, our customer, we'll communicate directly, or we'll communicate through Central Square, which my understanding is if you're a user in there, the applicant should be receiving emails every time a document is uploaded to their permit. Because I know that I certainly receive emails when a document is uploaded. But for the medium and large size projects that go through this process, from my perspective and my experience, the planner is basically the project manager on the city's behalf and even on our behalf somewhat. To navigate through this process. So a assigned planner is a key player.
I understand that, and just the other part that I'm parsing out, just a very simplistic piece of this is, you know, what's your part in this? As you said 100 times, what's your part and how is that conveyed?
Yeah.
Right? And then I don't know, because I haven't looked, and what is the connection back as a link to the city? Right? All those things are really helpful, whether we think about it or not. It's very helpful since we don't have a one-stop shop, which would be ideal, so that people are not running all over the world in this little teeny city trying to get what they need, you know, and so we don't have a one-stop shop model per se. And so how do we together help keep things connected as much as possible? So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Okay, we've done a full loop. I want to wrap us. I did see Trustee Ford had another comment, and I'm gonna wrap us after this.
So for me, I was placed in a situation where I was asked a lot of questions, right? And sort of like what we kind of discussed right now, what did they do, what they didn't do? So I went to the city. City has a detail, my colleague. Okay. And so I went there and I saw, oh, wait a minute. Like you just said, they only did phase one. It's not look like they went to phase two because it's almost similar, but they did not. And so then I said, okay, well, let me just take another step forward and see what else that they did do, because it's on the link, it's right here. It's every construction person gets it. And they were missing that lateral piece that you were referring to. It lets you know exactly where they're at in that particular project, because everyone sees it. You can be in China, you can be in the moon, and you can see it. So when they were talking to me, I said, oh, yeah, I can see why your project hasn't went forward, because you didn't finish this piece right here. And as he pointed out, it costs a lot of money. What is this one right here? This one they paid right here, $18 million that they were trying to oversee, didn't want to do, so to speak. So then they reach out to me or you, and they just tell us, so sort of like, your kid don't tell you all the truth, that mama said that you couldn't have all of that, right? So this is the piece that, and then it tells me exactly when they pulled the papers, how much they already paid, when it was done, and what's the next step. So for us, I think that's what we need to be careful, and I'll be happy to send this to you if you're interested in it. But yeah, I just recently had something also, somebody wanted to start at 5 a.m. On a project, and I'm like, you're not about to wake our babies up, and did you get a permit? And they did not. So that's why I say that if you'd like me to help send that to you, so that you can click on and see where this is. And also too, another thing too that called me, I also look up people's address when I do any meet and greet, because most of the time I find out that they are unincorporated. I can't go, you gotta go someplace else now. I'll direct you though, but that's beyond my purview, right? So you can also look that up too. I can show you that website as well. So I think that's what's so good about today's technology. You don't have to know all the answers. You just now need to know where to look for them. Thank you for letting me share.
All right, with that, I'm gonna close the item. Thank you both again for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And we have continued item C to a future meeting when trustee James is here, so that's gonna bring us to the general manager's report.
Sure, thank you. So there'll be no district board meeting in November, so no board meeting in November. Property tax bills have gone out and we've received questions, since the district wastewater and stormwater, service fees are on the property tax bill. So I don't know if you received questions, we've started to have, people trickle in. If you receive any questions, please direct them to the district or direct them to our website. Our website has contact information and it has all the information on how the rates were determined, what it means, if it's the rate breakdown that the finance has there, it works really well. The next district's next strategic plan is moving forward, which I hopefully you've heard about. It will have stakeholder interviews. Barry Dunn reached out to you, all of you, I hope, with an email from Michelle Kennedy that was sent late last Monday afternoon, October 13th, to schedule an interview. So we've all received that. Let me know if you have any questions. The strategic planning meeting with the board is scheduled for Monday, December 8th. It's a 3-hour meeting from 5 to 8. Well, hopefully everybody's available for that. That's gonna be a great opportunity to, a lot of things we've talked about is that, how can the district, where do you want the district to go in the next 5 years? What are some of the concerns? How can we best shape the district? The social pinpoint survey for the strategic plan to obtain the public's input is live. We do have a QR code. So try to get everybody you talk to go to this. If they go to this, they can fill out a survey and there's great questions on there as far as what you expect the district to do. So we're going to try to push that as much as we can. If you could push that out to your own websites, everything, that'd be great. The sandbag station at the end of Ryder Street was opened about a week earlier this year because of the big rains. So we got that going, so we adjust them. The district has experienced a couple break-ins to our offsite pump stations. We had one at Missouri Stormwater on October 6th. They cut a bunch of wires that took out our sewer pump station as well. Just somebody on bike cut the fence, came in, pulled the wires, cut them. We eventually caught it, got the wires back, but we had to, act quick to get the pump station back going. New Bedford lift station also was just completed. Just had the notice of completion was completed on the 10th of October. It's a $2.6 million station with a full replacement. David Espinosa, the project manager, did a great job on that. Nothing was stolen. The fence was cut. The door was generator building was open. Pried open, a lot of damage. Luckily it knocked off our security alarm, so we were out there quick enough to chase them away. Last Saturday, the district hosted the Vallejo Community Air Monitoring Network event. Jennifer Harrington, back of the room. She coordinated it and it had about 20 residents. The Vallejo Community Air Monitoring Network is it's led by Ken Zutsu, he's the founder of it. In this 20 residents, it also included high school students and a UC Davis professor. Basically, we're looking at developing a new program to track volatile organic compounds, and this was the first of 3 sessions that the district will hold with this group. And this is to emphasize the ongoing cooperation and coordination with the group to help map sewer odors and other volatile organic compounds as sources in the community. It was a valuable opportunity for the high school students. They also took a tour. Mitch, one of our operators, gave a great tour. And a lot of them, the high school students, they're like, hey, can we get an internship there? So it's really how we get the people in here, get high school students and people in here to understand what the district does. So a great success there. This week, and we've been singing around with the people that work here, the UC Berkeley's Mobile Air Pollution Laboratory is on site. It's like $1 million van that has these monitoring that drives around and gets all the emissions. Very high tech. It's a high level monitoring that offers a great opportunity to gather more valuable data on where all the odors, potential odors in the plant are coming from. Great breakdown on that. So really high levels. And I really want to thank Jennifer Harrington. She arranged it all, did all that. And she is also, as of today, based on the consent calendar or consent item, she is our new director of regulatory affairs and a member of our executive team. That's the end of my report.
Oh, wait a minute, you missed something. 42 and only.
Oh, well, we met, we did meet for a few hours.
At the event for the young people.
Which one?
Remember the hiking and all the.
Oh, that's right, we did that. That was the
The Watershed Explorer.
Watershed Explorer program. Also, another thing that we do help sponsor, to get more kids basically involved in the Brazil by Glencoe. To go look at and do a lot of science-based activities. So really to try to get more kids interested in science and STEM.
Can I tell how much you donated?
I-
$8,000.
I'm-
$8,000. So, and the lady was saying to me with his report that if it had not been for him, the program would have
The
failed.
district.
The district, I apologize, the district.
I have
Let me say that right. The district, that had not been because of my being Christopher Land. And it was so amazing and it made it possible for them kids to be part of it and engaged and even so far talked about what was not part of the system that was there before and why is that? And then what is part of the system and was because of programs like this.
Okay, it's a great book.
Right, that's gonna bring us to community forum. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak with the board this evening? And do we have anyone online?
We do not, Madam
Okay,
President.
seeing none, I will go ahead to reports by presiding officer and trustees. Do any of the trustees have anything to report?
Yeah, we will talk about that right there because it was very enlightening to see both, at first I was surprised to see them there. So it was such a robust program. It was probably what, a 3-hour program? Yeah, 3 hours, we hiked and, it was kids from Glen Cove. And we talked about with the program person to expand it out to various districts, maybe like, maybe do your district one, your district and our district. We have so much that our kids need to learn. And also to get outside, and pay attention to your surroundings. So what they did was we planted some seeds that are naturally supposed to be there, but because of course of time or development, whatever, they're no longer there. So we planted seeds there and so they'll monitor it and then we'll come back and visit it again. So that was something I was excited about. I also wanted to say, whatever you are doing regarding the smell, I drive by here all the time and I haven't really smelled anything like I used to. I don't know if it's because it's winter and not summer, but only time I really smell it is when I'm actually coming up on to the location, which is probably normal. But I am smelling something that can do so it because we hosted at Norman King Center a fresh air of Vallejo program and with my God, I saw one of your representatives there. But anyways, and he did talk about having something here in Vallejo because the smell we all are saying it smells almost chemical. It does like you ever smell that Xerox smell? That when you're in the machine making copies, it smells like that. Not so much as poop or anything, but you can say that, but just saying. So I just really want to say thank you for that and that involvement because I think that you're being transparent to the community. And I appreciate that. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right, with that, Mr. Matthews.
Just a quick item, for you guys to figure out, Mark and President Source. In the Mare Island report, item 4E, there was a call out to meetings that perhaps should be happening between the board, the city, and Mare Island Company. I'm only pulling that out as an example because I would want to see reflected on here on a go-forward basis. Updates on from the committee that's working on 50 Solano, the real estate transaction that we've designated as a board. And then some report out from the members of the board that are also participating on those Mare Island discussions in our meeting. And I don't know if that happens in a brief punchy email you send us, just to give us an update on what's happening there, or if that's included in the agenda packet, but I would just want to see that on a go forward.
So you're talking about two different things.
Yes,
So,
I'm calling on both.
yeah, so the committee for, it's exclusively for 50 Solano.
Yes.
And then also for the railroad tracks. So there's a committee set up that there's been no meetings. There's a meeting scheduled after this, but we're gonna adjourn to a later date. So and those are public meetings, just like any other meeting, and there'll be a report out at the meeting. So that's, if it goes into closed session, there'll be a report out. And that's how that'll handle. For Mare Island, we haven't had any other meetings on that one either. So those.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like we've created these like groups or structures, right, to have subset of our team deal with these issues, and so I would want to see that reflected on this document or somewhere where, like,
Okay,
there's some report out that's
Absolutely.
happening, and I'm not like having to go through different documents of.
so that, yeah, the committee reporting, I mean, those will be, it's a separate committee, will be reported at the committee meeting. The ones for Mare Island will be on the informational item. If we do have meetings or whatever, we'll put them on.
Okay.
I think as a follow-up to that, I think, because I've been getting questions from my constituents that actually pay attention to this VFW board meeting along with the city council meetings and just trying to get a better understanding. So the subcommittee we created with or with the mayor along and president and along with trustee Gordon, that's separate specifically just for the three railroad
So the,
properties and the Solano, nothing else related to.
correct. Yeah, it says Cassandra James, trustee James.
Oh,
Trustee
okay.
Source and Gordon, and it's
Correct.
only, as it was set up, it was only for 50 Solano and the railroad properties.
So there's nothing else related to that from a property or a development standpoint that we as a board cannot address or what can I say,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was, this was more. Maybe it sounded more complicated because I'm a little sleep deprived this late in the hour. What I'm trying to get at here is. The board has voted on multiple occasions this year to create these like subgroups to deal with these very specific issues. And so just to make sure that there is that separation, my expectation as a trustee would be that. At least for those two subcommittees that we voted on. To have each one of them do this one thing, that there would be some report out happening at the board meetings on like what progress has been made, because. I wouldn't have known unless I would have reviewed. Like I read that email, I read that report, that Mare Island report, and it said no meetings have occurred. And so I was like, okay, then my question was, well, why not? So I would wanna understand like what is happening in between meetings to ensure that we're fully briefed on activities, and that's. I'm
Yeah,
assuming something that can fall on you. I'm not asking my colleagues to do that. I just wanna know what's happening.
Yeah, so
Or if
there's-
something hasn't happened, like.
And I'll say that the Mare Island reports have had the updates. I think every single time there's been an update that's been provided. The reason there haven't been any meetings is because the city staff haven't met.
So I would wanna,
Yep.
like,
Like,
if
that's
there's a
what I-
one liner that says there's been no meetings, like my question right away was like, well, why wasn't there a meeting? So. I know that you guys wanna preserve great working relationships, but. In this hat that I'm wearing right now, like, it would just be helpful, like, if we voted to create something. Then like, what is that group doing, or what haven't they done, what are some next steps, like. Cause I read the report and yet I still have that question and that wasn't answered.
you know, one thing you were asking, and maybe I don't remember, so this subgroup on Mare Island.
There's not.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the creation of a second Mare Island. The only group that's been created is the committee for 50 Solano and the railroad, but there is no created subgroup for Mare Island.
There never was.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a question?
Could be
Just a
good.
clarifying
Go ahead, and then
question?
this is board member update, so we are gonna have to.
This is a clarifying question, and I appreciate. The 11 times, but there was a message, Mayor Source said that you were. At Mare Island and you were meeting with your VW hat. So if there was no meeting, then how was the meeting with your VW hat on?
That was the meeting that they talked about at our meeting a couple months ago.
So,
They already reported out on that and we talked.
I didn't
about it,
hear that,
discussed
that's
it,
what I'm
and it was at
asking.
this meeting.
I mean, as far as like committees that have been established by this board. The committee that was established was 50 Solano and the railroad properties. So, and that was provided clear, this is your responsibility to negotiate on these two properties. So Mare Island, I mean, if the mayor, Matulak or any of the people are involved in the meeting, that's not, like, it's not set up as a separate group that has responsibilities set up by this board. Like, there's no group set up by this board to handle Mare Island issues. Now, you're all involved. I mean, Palmaris gets involved in some issues as well. Separately, he may ask me questions, Brigander asks me questions sometimes about Maryland specific. But as far as I know, there's no group established with duties or responsibilities set up as a subgroup to this board.
So all I was asking is I don't want this to go in many different directions. As a trustee of the board, I just said, I took a vote several months ago to authorize for this subgroup to be created to focus on 50 Solano, the railroad, and I forget what else. It was
That's it.
those two, right? So all I was asking for, I mean, I called out the Mare Island meeting because it was referenced in that report. But all I was asking for was, if I've taken a vote to create a group to focus on an issue, how can I, in this agenda for a future meeting, receive updates on what is or is not happening? Because otherwise we're just taking votes.
So, yes, Bert, so we can, so in the agenda, we can put a report out, like a report out, you know, what's the report out from the committee?
Yeah.
So we could put that as part of the agenda,
That's all
absolutely, no problem.
Seeing no other.
No, I just want to end and say thank VFWD for their role in coastal cleanup, and especially with having Jackie Maris as our direct link to where I think I shared the photos that we had, so I want to thank your VFWD's role, which I didn't even know VFWD had a role in coastal cleanup, but it was a great participation and it was a great event, so thank you.
That will adjourn at 8:20 p.m. Thank you all.
That's 6, right? 6 hours.